So let's just get right in it and start talking about this Kansas referendum with your fresh Morning Joe.
Kansas sending a thunderbolt of a message last night. Let's go straight to the big board where we find NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. Steve, good morning. What more can you tell us about what happened in Kansas last night?
Yeah, look, I think you're covering the big point in terms of turnout here. Now, more than 900,000 votes are counted in this primary. Typically in a Kansas primary, at least if you...
So in Kansas, the no vote, so what it was, just to jog your memory, chat, there was a constitutional amendment to ban abortion statewide in Kansas, or give the Kansas state government, rather, the ability to ban abortion. Now, the Kansas Supreme Court had ruled that abortion was a fundamental right in the Kansas Constitution, forbidding Kansas state legislature from passing abortion bans. So this was an attempt with a confusingly worded referendum to try to get people to vote to ban it. And not only did the no vote win, it won a mega landslide. This is a giga landslide in Kansas. And wait till you hear about the turnout.
You went back just to 2018 when you had competitive primaries on both sides. The number was really half of that. It was about 450,000. When you've had president, at least if you went back just to 2018, big point in terms of turnout here. Now, more than 900,000 votes are counted in this primary. Typically in a Kansas primary, at least if you went back just to 2018 when you had competitive primaries on both sides, the number was really half of that. It was about 450,000. When you've had presidential election, general election turnout in Kansas, in 2012, it was just under 1.2 million. In 2016, it was about 1.2 million. And again, you're over 900,000 here in a midsummer primary. So I think it shows you the level of...
Oh, and by the way, Chad, I just want to point this out. Land doesn't vote, Kansas edition. So you go into Kansas, the vast majority of counties, by the way, that are like squares or rectangles and have literally no human beings in them. Oh yeah, yes, really won it big in a county with 50 fucking people in it. But you go to Wichita, you go to Topeka, you go to Lawrence, where the people actually live in the state of fucking Kansas, and it's a goddamn blowout. Land doesn't vote. People should. Abolish the Electoral College. Hell Demon, thanks for the 200 bits. Appreciate you.
Interest clearly that this referendum brought out among the electorate. I think one thing that's interesting here too is, yeah, you think of Kansas as a red state. It did go for Donald Trump by 15 points in 2020. In that Trump-Biden election in 2020, 5 counties in the entire state of Kansas, 5 counties voted for Joe Biden. When Laura Kelly, the current Democratic governor, got elected in 2018, she won statewide. She only actually carried 8 counties. You can see the no side on this referendum is actually going to end up carrying 19 counties. So that is a much more sweeping verdict than even the Democrat who won the gubernatorial election in 2018 got. A couple things that stick out to me in this. First of all, to get a number up near 60%, where the no is going to land on this, there were some Republicans who voted in the Republican primary just mathematically and then voted no on this. So there was crossover voting in that direction, trying to figure out exactly how much. But that's an ingredient that had to be part of this. Another ingredient, though, is I think something that Democrats have been talking about politically since that Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. They have been saying that it would have a particular effect in the suburban areas of the country where Democrats have been making the biggest inroads over the last decade, particularly with college-educated voters, particularly with college-educated female voters in metro areas, in suburban areas. And so I want to call attention to one county here. This is Johnson County, Kansas. And actually, I mean, if you could just do the math in your heads, you could see this is the biggest in the state. This is a massive suburban metropolitan Kansas City county here. And the vote was overwhelmingly no. 68% no. In terms of the share of the statewide electorate that Johnson makes up, this is always high. This is unusually high. Right now, you're looking at about 27% of all the votes cast in this Kansas primary came out of this county, Johnson County. More typically, that number is going to be between 20 and 25. So that shows an extreme level of interest in just the place Democrats were saying after that Supreme Court ruling that you would have new political engagement or higher political engagement. And now the question, if Democrats were right about that.
And like this is incredible. Joe Biden is one of the most ineffective presidents we've had in decades with a trifecta. And in the last couple months, he's been a disaster in foreign policy. You know, inflation crushing the country and the working class, getting slapped around by Republicans and moderates, just feckless loser, zero charisma. The Democrats seem like, and it's possible, they might be getting rescued by the insane, radical right, overreach theocracy and the Democratic strategy of, at least we're not them. Is it working? It might be working because the Republicans are that fucking batshit. Now, that's the doomer way of looking at it. I have another way of spinning it that's more positive.
At that point, the question is, this is a referendum on abortion. What Democrats have also been saying is that this sentiment, this energy will attach itself to the general election, to the Democrat versus Republican races in the general election. I don't know if that's the case, but just take a closer look here at Johnson County, because I think this is so fascinating. There are counties like this all across the country, big suburban counties that have made this kind of a journey over the last decade. In 2012, Johnson was just a bedrock Republican county. The Republicans won it by almost 20 points. In 2016, Donald Trump came along. Trump carried it, but by a vastly reduced margin. His presidency further alienated the voters in that county, and Joe Biden ended up winning it by more than 8 points in 2020. Now, on this referendum, Johnson is a no by a margin of 37 points.
Wow, again, those are those are presidential level numbers. I mean, if Joe Biden only got 186,000, Trump, when he won it, got 173,000. I mean, obviously, the overall turnout is less than a presidential year, but it is way over scale for a primary.
Like if you give people a
that's
thing
bad
to
shit.
They will turn out after all.
David Pruitt, that's exactly my fucking theory of politics. Thank you.
Democrats have been saying is there are a lot of
This is a midterm primary turnout. People turned out for this. It turned out exactly for this.
In counties across the country, the suburbs of Philadelphia, the suburbs of Atlanta, the suburbs of Phoenix, places like that where Democrats have made similar inroads over the last decade and where they think this issue is going to be resonant, is going to give them a boost in the fall. It's a two-pronged argument Democrats have been making here. I think on the first argument they've been making, they've got proof from what happened in Johnson.
Also, I mean, honestly, like, this is kind of an ADHD point, but oil prices have kind of cooled, haven't they? Hello, internet? Okay, scared me. Oil prices are down to $92 in the U.S. and below $100 in Europe. You know, like, these are kind of important thresholds. How is the U.S. markets today? I mean, another solid day for the markets. The markets are up in the last month, right? They're just straight up. They're up from around, what, 30,000, 31,000 up to 32. Markets have kind of stabilized the last month. Oil prices are down. Gas prices are, you know, not as bad as they were. They're down again. Are they below? Well, how much are they where you are? How are gas prices near you? I mean, it's still kind of expensive in PA. We're getting railed. Pennsylvania is expensive, unfortunately. And California is still $5.50. That's really bad. You know, if the gas prices get down to in the $3.50 range nationwide, you know, that's gonna be a pretty big deal for him.
Thanks for all the content, Mike DSAL.
$3.45 a gallon down the street at Costco in northern Alabama. Yeah, you guys probably have some of the cheapest prices in the country. So I hate to say, you know, events happened and it really was the squeeze went on Biden, and now events are happening. And maybe he's getting a boost again. Maybe it's starting to rebound, you know, with the abortion decision, the Manchin miracle, you know, actually passing something. I may think it's dog shit, but they raised taxes on corporations. They spend some money on climate. Is it enough? Fuck no. But at least he has something to point to. Is it a success? No. I think they also did something to lower prescription drug prices to allow Medicare to negotiate some of them. You know, if that bill actually gets through, the Inflation Reduction Act actually gets through, Biden will have done a couple things. Dead cat bounce is certainly possible. I'm just giving you the optimistic case. We're going to get through the IRA in a second. Did they really raise taxes on corporation if the minimum corporate tax was 21% and they stipulated that it has to be 15%? No. Funkadelic, the minimum corporate tax is not 21%. No. The statutory rate was 21%. But corporations were able to take deductions to take their tax liability down to 0 or negative. This bill makes it so no matter how many deductions, no matter what you do with your taxes, you still owe 15. Doesn't matter if you've done every tax dodge. The minimum is 15%. This is a tax increase. Manchin, who is taking credit, though, is already popular with Republicans and moderates. He is who he is on the news, though, not Biden. I don't see people equating with him even at this point. Also, Kansas has a Democratic governor elected the Trump era. Yeah, because the other guy was a fucking dipshit. This is a much bigger win than I think you understand. Somewhat related to midterms, do you think Biden will be stupid enough to not extend the student loan forbearance? I think he already did, didn't he? On monies made in the U.S., they will shift profits overseas. That's not how it works. Actually, surprisingly, America is one of the only countries in the world to tax foreign profits. So if you have profits overseas, they're 15%. When you bring them back to the United States, they're taxed at 15%. So foreign profits are always taxed in the U.S. Carried interest just changed to have you wait 3 years to claim it versus 4. It was 18 months, I believe, or 3 years before. I think it's 5 now. Chris Kobach, the new AG, is a dipshit they wouldn't vote for. I mean, my sis who had student loans work for the government and just had hers paid off. Yeah, that's called the PLISIF loan forgiveness. Biden has, to his credit, increased the number of PLISIF loan forgiveness, the public service loan forgiveness program.
County, Kansas last night, that, yeah, this did bring out a lot of political energy in the suburbs, in particular in Kansas. The second argument they're making is that this will resonate as well in the partisan November general elections of Democratic candidates, Republican candidates. From a referendum here, we can't answer that yet, but that's what they're hoping for. We'll see if that's what happens.
Well, let's look at just, Steve, if you can, let's look at the journey that the Republican Party has taken in this one county from Mitt Romney's election in 2012 to what happened last night. And this really underlines, we had reporting that Donald Trump was just aghast when Republicans started passing the anti-choice laws in Texas, also very concerned that he would be hurt in the areas where Republicans were already bleeding support. And sure enough, I think a lot of Republicans needed to be concerned about that, because look at those numbers again. You brought it up. That it's incredible.
Abortion bans are an extreme position. You know, when you talk about late-term abortions or you talk about the specifics of a procedure, you can get some people to feel icky about it, to disapprove of it, not like it, whatever. You can do that. You can manage to manipulate people. But when you talk about the idea of forcing a preteen to have a incest rape baby, everyone thinks you're a fucking freak. The idea that people should be forced to have children they don't want to have. The vast majority of the country they may not like abortions. They may think they're even kind of icky, but they want to have that ickiness available if they need it. It's a hypocrisy, but it's a hypocrisy that the vast majority of people are living in. And when the Republicans come out and say, well, at least we're consistent on our definition of life, starting at conception, and so we're going to carry through our logical conclusion, I got to be honest with you, chat. That's what you sound like when you get your politics from a debate streamer. Well, at least they may be fucking horrendous and terrible policy and transparently evil to how the real world would actually experience such a law. but at least they're consistent. I don't give a shit about consistency, and neither does Americans. They don't give a shit if you have a consistent definition of when life starts. They have a consistent definition of what they think is reasonable for being able to control your reproductive status. And the Republicans have really, really overreached. It would be one thing if they had chipped away at Roe v. Wade and peeled back abortions to 15 weeks. But to go for broke, to go for a goddamn complete ban, even in the cases of rape and incest, is truly, absolutely batshit crazy.
In just one decade, from Mitt Romney's election night to last night, Democrats have lost 20, or Republicans have lost 26 points in this county. Of course, we're comparing apples and oranges a bit here, but you look at Mitt Romney's 57% and you look at the Republicans' 31% last night. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, and as I say, again, there are counties like this across the country. You know, you just think of these big suburban counties, Cobb County in Georgia, for instance, you know, that you used to, when George W. Bush was president, even when just Mitt Romney was running in 2012, you used to just look at him on election night and say, not if the Republicans are going to win him, but just what's the margin Republicans are going to get out of them. And that's where Republicans have suffered their erosion. That was also, when you think back to 2018, that blue wave in 2018, what keyed it,
Maybe to throw that
it was
11
suburbs,
months.
it was metropolitan areas of cities all across the country. So when you look here to 2022 and what Democrats are trying to pull off in terms of hanging on to the Senate, and I mean, maybe, you know, having some kind of fighting chance in the House, it goes through the Johnson counties of America. So that's why I paid particularly close attention to this. But it is also true that if you look at other counties, we could just look at counties in rural, you know, Kansas here. I mean, again, this is what I say. There were Republicans, you know, who voted no on this. Here's just one random county in rural western Kansas. You know, Donald Trump won 85% of the vote here. Joe Biden barely got 10% in 2020. The no side got basically triple what Biden got. You know, again, this is a win in this county for yes, but not nearly the margin Republicans have been posting there. So that's another ingredient of what happened here in Kansas.
This is kind of the thesis that I've had about this country's politics for years, is that 2/3 of the country are progressive on policy. About 40% of the GOP is progressive on policy, but they're caught up in the identity of republicanism, or they disapprove of liberals and the Democrats. And they have ended up as a Republican, even if you ask them point by point, issue by issue, whether they agree with the Republican platform, they absolutely won't agree. And this discontinuity between, like, the average Republican, or that 30-40% of Republicans, and their vote for politicians is absolutely killing the country. Okay, hold on. We got more. We got more of this. More of this coverage. It's important.
What a night, Joe.
It was really a night. There's a massive headline, though, coming out of Kansas, a massive headline that is reverberating around Washington this morning in both Democratic and Republican circles. And that, of course, has to do with the Kansas voters' decision to just say no to Republican legislators deciding the future of decisions that are made by their wives, by their daughters, by their loved ones. And it's astounding. This comes from a state that voted overwhelmingly to protect. You don't really even say abortion rights, to protect the rights of women to have control over their own
He's
bodies.
so scared to say. Kansas gives a 60% return in a midterm primary ballot where they post near presidential level turnout, and this motherfucker could barely get himself to say the word abortion anyway.
Instead of state legislators who have just been extreme and radical across America, whether it's forcing a 10-year-old girl to flee her state after being raped, whether it's Texas Republicans deciding that they want to retain the right to let mothers die on operating tables. You go, I mean, my God, in other states, I mean, I saw a debate on a state legislative floor where they were actually in Idaho talking about the right of rapists' relatives to sue a woman who was raped, to sue a rape victim and get $20,000 per rapist relative. This is the crazy stuff this is the Republican Party of 2022, Mika. And you look in Kansas, and the Kansas voters, even people who are pro-life, said, no, we're not going in that radical, freakish direction. And really quickly, just about Kansas, they haven't voted for a Democratic candidate for president in over 50 years.
Yeah.
They haven't had a United States senator that was not a Republican in over 50 years. So on national issues, they are as conservative as can be. And last night, overwhelmingly, they voted to preserve the right of privacy, the right for women to make medical decisions, the right for women to decide, the right for parents to help their 10-year-old daughters, their 11-year-old daughters who have been raped, to make life-changing decisions. And there is no doubt that message from Kansas, Mika, reached Washington, D.C. late last night.
And Willie, just for the midterms, I'll say this just as the woman on the set, watch out. I mean, I'm surprised by Kansas, and I'm not surprised because women are not going to stand by idly and say, yeah, you can take away our rights. You can take away our personal rights. You can take away our sisters' rights. You can take away our daughters' rights. Forget it. Watch out. And Kansas is your example this morning.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court's decision on Dobbs, which overturned Roe versus Wade, said we're actually going to kick this back to the states. It's up to the states to decide what to do about abortion. Well, Kansas was the first to speak very loudly about what it wanted to do about abortion. And to Joe's point about what kind of state this is, obviously a very red state. But even last night, there weren't competitive Democratic races. In other words, you wouldn't expect a ton of Democrats to rush out and vote on this, but they did.
Chat. Guess who was the last Democrat who I went and looked at all the presidential elections until I saw Kansas voting for not a Republican. Guess who the last president was that Kansas voted for a Democrat? FDR. And it looks, and I said it earlier, it's LBJ.
But in that,
it's LBJ. LBJ running on what he called the Great Society programs. Where, for example, LBJ created a little program we like to call Medicare. And he launched what he called a war on poverty. And, of course, passing the civil rights bills. He only got 61% of the vote.
State, it's got to be Republicans, too, because it was not close. As we showed just a minute ago, the voters in Kansas rejected the effort to remove the right to an abortion from the state's constitution. That was the question on the ballot.
I've been up for so long this morning, I didn't even... chat, my energy is lower than it should be, so I'm gonna need you to hype me up because I've been up for basically didn't really sleep much last night. 61% is a landslide at a presidential. I know there's rarely been a more than 60% popular vote. Where's my luggage? Nobody knows. LBJ's anti-communism is his worst part of him by far. So hype me up, chat.
41 was the vote. It marks the first time the issue has been put to a
Kelly,
vote since the
86,
Supreme Court overturned Roe
sub.
versus Wade in June. With the November midterms coming, as Mika said, the Kansas vote signals abortion will be an energizing issue.
Look at those numbers, Willie. Look at those numbers. Beforehand, the predictions were that the yes vote would win by a couple of points. Right. Every poll showed that. This is one of those, and there were people that were afraid to tell pollsters how they were going to vote. This is sort of the reverse Trump effect, the reverse Bradley effect. This is a tsunami.
It is, just not close. And again, in Kansas, this is in the state of Kansas, the Associated Press had an estimate. The turnout for yesterday's primary far exceeded other recent contests, with about 900,000 Kansas voters casting a ballot. So, Joe, clearly this is a statement from the state of Kansas and perhaps a signal to Republican candidates and obviously Democrats who want to run on this come the fall, that this is an issue where many, many, many Americans, including in red states, have made up their mind, and Kansas is a big red flag.
You know, we need to send Elise Jordan out to do another one of her focus
3 months
groups.
of subs to Amaranth. Amaranth, big fan of the stream. Big fan of the stream, so I appreciate that. Too bad Austin can't keep you like you did QT. She forgot her phone and was on a plane for 4 days, tracking the location the whole time. Oh, really? That's really fucking awesome.
That's Praxis.
Honestly, I don't give a shit about Keith Urban. Who gives a fuck? That's not even Malding Field. That's weak. Tim Bob, thanks for gifting a sub as well. And Between Two Rocks, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. Look how many more votes Jerry Moran got with no primary opponent versus the incumbent governor. Issues are not candidates. Remember the video with Trumper saying Dems took away women's rights at the 4th of July rally? Thoughts on the Black Air Force? I think it's a Korean War movie, and it looks absolutely fucking terrible. All Tab Dad, thanks for the 5 tier 1s. I appreciate you.
Yes. Because we learned so much from these focus groups. I remember back in 2016, Mark Halperin and John Heilman had that focus group for Bloomberg where you had the working class woman in West Virginia, I believe, saying, Donald Trump, he's one of us.
That was,
and it was like a thunderbolt. And you go, oh, my God. OK, wow, that's what's happening out there. And then, you know, I'm still thinking about Elise Jordan's Georgia. Trumper, the man who, again, fed into every conspiracy theory. He was a Trumper's Trumper. And she asked about abortion. He goes, I'm a man. What are you asking me about abortion?
Thank you,
This is none of my business. I'm pro-life. I identify as pro-life. But this is
there a war movie you like at all? Sure. Sure, I like war movies. I just think the U.S. was the unalloyed evil in the Korean War, and they were the wrong side. And the Air Force did horrific war crimes.
That's
Anonymous user, thanks for the gift. Chat, we are in a hype train right now, aren't we? We aren't? Oh, we must be on a cooldown. All right, well, shit. Thank you anyway. Thank you for being awesome. What are your thoughts on the Crusades? One of the most interesting periods of history. Anti-fascista Gandalf. Thank you for the tier 1. Super complicated, super interesting. Really led to the modern era. Ham the Dawn, thanks for the tier 1. I don't really necessarily agree with the concept of it as it's some sort of like proto-colonialism, because that was a period. I don't think that really fits. I think that's an attempting to put modern concepts on more primitive era of history. Super interesting. Moria, thank you for the tier 1. We could talk a lot about it, but it's like it's not really relevant to what we're doing. In 5 days, one of the unionized preschools here in Portland is striking. Nice.
Decision. And Willie, I just think you look at Kansas, and I think it's an example of a lot of people who identify themselves as pro-life looking at what's happened since Roe's been overturned, looking at the extremism, looking at the 10-year-old girls being chased from their state, looking at the Texas Attorney General fighting for the right to let mothers die on an operating table, to tear away the protections that the federal government is trying to put in place to protect moms to have a choice on whether they die on an operating table or not. You look at all the extremities in it now, again, in another Republican state legislature, trying to give the right to members of a rapist's family to sue a rape victim for $20,000 unless she has a forced pregnancy. This is a rapist's Bill of Rights that these Republicans are passing. A rapist Bill of Rights for forced childbirth on children. This is a Republican Party in 2022, and even in a pro-life.
By the way, and that's I rarely give Joe Scarborough credit, but I think that's a good line. Republicans want a rapist's Bill of Rights. You rape someone, your family now has control over them. That's fucking insane.
That's praxis.
Life state. Even in a Republican state that hasn't elected a Democratic president in 50 years. They are repulsed by the radicalism of this new Republican Party.
Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income inequality worse. You are doing anti-praxis. We are the only Twitch stream that will not accept scam advertisers, and I will never fuck you over by selling you crap